Hello.
We are here with Jim Kraft, who is a writer for some nationally syndicated comic strips. You may have heard of Baby Blues and Zits. As well, he is a children's book author, and he has an interesting career path that he'd like to share with us. So let's just start there.
All right. Well, in college, I went to college thinking I went to Kenyon College, by the way, which is a little liberal arts college in Ohio.
Okay.
And I went there thinking I would either be an English or a history major. But while I was there, I got very, very interested in ancient history. So I wound up being a classics major because that's in the classics department. So I studied Latin, Greek, and ancient history while I was at Kenyon. But I also knew that I was very, very interested in writing, partly because I've always been a very avid reader. I love to read. And I think, I thought that that would be so cool if I could actually write stuff that other people would enjoy reading.
Okay.
So this is something I thought I had a chance to do rather than, say, play in the NBA or something like that. So I was very interested in writing, and after I got out of college, you can't necessarily find a writing job unless you're interested in, say, journalism or something like that, and you want to work for a newspaper, which I didn't. So I did various jobs, worked for a hotel chain, and I worked at the library at Xavier University. I love libraries because I love books.
Okay.
And while I was there, I saw an ad in the newspaper for a humorous greeting card writer. It was an ad put out by Gibson Greetings of Cincinnati, where I lived and where I grew up. And it was the oldest greeting card company in America at that time, and they were looking for somebody to write funny greeting cards.
Okay.
So I sent them a resume, and they sent me a test. And they must have liked my test because they called me and interviewed me, and they hired me.
Okay.
So I worked at Gibson for about 3.5 years, writing all sorts of greeting cards, mostly funny ones, sometimes some serious ones.
You had a couple examples?
Yes, I had a couple over here. While we were there, Gibson had gotten the rights to do Garfield greeting cards. And I had a particular knack, I think, for doing Garfield cards. So I ended up writing a lot of them. I became the Garfield editor. I started working with Jim Davis, the creator of Garfield. Got to know him. And then I contacted Jim and said, "Do you need a writer because you know my work?" And he said, "Yes, I do." And so I started working for Garfield the Cat then.
So you did writing for the comic strip for Garfield, but you also did a lot of merchandise, I understand?
Yes, Garfield was very popular right then.
Okay.
So we had a lot of merchandise, nightshirts and T-shirts and underwear and posters and greeting cards, calendars.
Okay.
So there was a whole lot of Garfield stuff that needed funny words on it.
Okay.
And Jim was mostly doing the TV specials and the strips and stuff like
Okay.
that.
Okay.
I did write some of the strips for him. But mostly it was my job to work on this other stuff. And then while I was there, we got contracts with a bunch of different publishers to do children's books.
Okay.
I had never thought that I was going to be a children's book writer. I always thought I'd write novels or something for adults. But this became part of my job there. So I started writing children's books starring Garfield.
Okay.
And I wrote a whole bunch of those, probably 30 or more,
Okay.
I imagine. While I was there, that became a big part of my job.
And we'll see some of those in just a little bit.
I thought that I was going to write novels like Jane Austen or something like that, But then I just got into this through happenstance, but I feel like this is probably what I was meant to do.
You've been very successful,
right?
So
and I have my sense of humor is probably one of the strong points about my writing ability, and so I probably ended up getting into something that really suited me. So, and I was very lucky because there aren't a whole lot of comic strip creators who employ people to do that for them, and there aren't a whole lot of them here in the Midwest. And I just happened to be in the right area to meet Jim Davis and go to work with for him. So I was very lucky that I got to do that. I got to be funny and get paid for it.
Yes. Yes.
So.
Yes. So tell me, you were saying that there's a team of people, and I was very surprised to hear about that some of the comic strips not require, but it takes a team of people to put the comic strip together.
Right.
There's other types of comic strips where one person more or less is doing everything. So tell me a little bit about that.
Yeah, it varies, and it's pretty much, the standard is probably the classic way pretty much is that one person will write and draw the strip. And someone like Charles Schulz, who created Peanuts, he, I believe, continued to draw the strip all the way up until he got too ill to do it. And you can see on his drawings as he got older that the line gets a little squigglier when he's drawing Charlie Brown because his hand was not as steady as it used to be. And somebody like Bill Watterson, who did Calvin and Hobbes, also went to the same college I did, Kenyon College. Yeah. He I think did the whole strip by himself, and most comic strips are done that way.
Oh, okay.
Jim Davis was a little different in that he started out doing it all by himself, but as Garfield got more popular, he wanted to be more in the role of, say, Walt Disney, who created Mickey Mouse, but then went on to have built this sort of entertainment empire where he basically just supervised everything.
Okay.
So with Jim, he actually has a staff of about 40 people total. Not all of those are artists, but
Okay.
many of them are. And they will draw Garfield that goes on products, or they will actually, Jim does not actually do the finished drawing for the strip. He does the rough drawing at the start,
Okay.
and then someone else will do what they call the blue line drawing, and then someone else will ink it.
Okay.
So there's a process there
Okay.
of doing the strip.
Now, you are currently freelance working for Zits and Baby Blues.
Right.
And they also use a team of people.
Right.
Tell me maybe from the process of you starting
Okay.
To the finished product.
It always starts with the words.
Okay.
So whether it's Jerry doing them or whether it's me.
Okay.
So yeah, I will sit down at my computer and think about what I'm going to, what I want to see happen in the strip.
Okay.
And then I'll show you. It's usually I'll write it out in 3 or 4. It can be anywhere from 1 to 4 panels, and I'll number what the panels are going to be. And I'll usually write out who I want to be in the particular strip. In this case, it's Daryl and Wanda. See Hammy and Zoe watching TV. This is Baby Blues, obviously.
So this is the description of what the picture would be.
Right, description of what the picture will be. And then I'll write the dialogue, where we're saying what they're going to say. And then I'll move on to the next panel and do the same process. Who's in the panel? Is there some action that needs to be done? And then move on to the third panel. In this case here, I say that the kids have vanished. They're gone from the strip, and we're just seeing the parents, and the parents are talking to each other. And that's the way it usually goes. And I do 10 of these at a time, and I send them to Jerry, and then he picks the ones that he likes and tells me what he's going to buy.
Okay.
So,
okay.
And then hopefully in about 6, 7, 8 weeks time, I'll see this strip in the paper. And now Jerry may run it completely as is. Sometimes he will change it a lot. Sometimes he will change it a little. That's his prerogative as the creator of the strip to do it. And if you're a writer, you have to learn to get used to being edited by people. Almost everybody gets edited.
Okay.
And that's just part of the job.
Okay.
One of the things about the 2 strips is, although they're never pinned down as to location, Jerry and Rick like to think of Baby Blues as being set in pretty much in the Phoenix area, which is where they both lived at one time.
Okay.
So I cannot do snow gags for Baby Blues. Every now and then they will allow, and Rick will allow, especially something that's a little more cold weather oriented. But basically, I'm locked into hot weather with those strips.
Wow.
Now, Zits takes place somewhere in the Midwest.
Yes.
So I can do seasonal gags. I can do gags about raking leaves or shoveling snow.
Okay.
Or if it being spring and the grass needing to be cut and things like that. So I have a little more leeway on the kind of ideas I can do with zits than I do not have with baby blues.
So you really have to know your characters.
You do.
Yeah.
Yeah, you do, and you have to know, where
their history,
where they're located.
Okay. So what inspires you for a strip or a book or
With the strip, sometimes it's based upon things that have happened to me in real life with my own kids. But that as the more you do, the more you run out of those ideas. So that you have to, I basically treat them like as if they were fictional characters. And I know the characters now and the kind of things they like to do, how they interact with each other.
Yeah.
For instance, Hammy and his sister Zoe have this kind of sibling rivalry. It's kind of antagonistic. She likes to one-up him and he likes to get back at her if he can. So, I'll use that interplay between the two of them. The parents are basically the typical harried parents, very busy parents of young children. They're helping with homework. Are they overscheduled? Or, are they doing enough? Are they doing too much? That parents can identify with. All those typical things that parents can identify with.
That's probably important for your audience.
Yes, for any audience. So that people, whether they're just starting to read the strip or whether they've been reading it for years, that young parents can read it and say, "Oh, that's true." That's the way it is. And with zits, it's basically, parenting teenagers and the kind of issues you can run in there with the teenagers wanting to be independent and possibly getting into some trouble. And are they going to be going to college? Will they get into the dating, all those sorts of things. So those are the kind of things that basically I just run through all those typical situations. Also throwing seasonal things in there like Christmas and Valentine's Day and so on.
So you're taking like stresses and problems in a general population's life,
right,
and making it funny.
Yeah, I mean that's it, and they're the details change. Nowadays, you're going to be writing about iPhones and the internet and things like that, where you wouldn't have done that 20, 25 years ago. Would have been different technology. But the basic situations, the basic problems that people have, that families have not changed all that much over the years. And if I'm lucky, I get a series of strips. I'll get a story arc. Where I can do 4 or 5 strips based on that same thing.
Where it kind of continues to the next day or the
right,
next week.
Right, and I did one just recently with Baby Blues, and Jerry bought a bunch of them where the father was helping Hammy with his homework. So I ran through a series of 4 or 5 of those. And that makes it, of course, a lot easier to get to 10 if you have an idea that you can stretch out over an arc, So, anyway.
So do you think while you're laying on the couch, while you're doing yard work, where do you think of the idea?
It can happen anywhere, but I tend to think about writing the strips when I actually sit down to write them. Every now and then I'll get some ideas. I get the ideas for some zits. Thanksgiving strips the other day while I was exercising, because your mind goes everywhere when you're doing something repetitive like that. So I kind of worked out 3 or 4 Thanksgiving strips in my head when I was doing that. So you can get ideas anywhere, but typically I don't really think about the strip until I'm actually ready to sit down and write those ideas.
And you're doing that on the computer?
And I'm doing that at the computer.
So with what you're doing, you can be anywhere in the country,
right?
Doing it from home. But
right.
That's not the case for every writer for comic strips or every artist for comic strips.
Not always. I mean, the people who are doing the Garfield, obviously, they are going into, a lot of them live in the Muncie area, But the way we work though with the other strips, we're spread out because I'm here in Carmel, and Jerry Scott lives in Santa Barbara, California. Jim Borgman, my old friend who draws zits, lives outside of Boulder, Colorado, and Rick Kirkman, who draws Baby Blues, lives in the Phoenix area. So we have 4 different locations there.
Technology is important.
So technology is important, exactly.
How long has Baby Blues or zits or some of these been in the newspaper?
Baby Blues has been around, I think, for about about 22 years.
Okay.
Zitz is slightly younger than that, but it's getting close to 20, I think. And then, of course, Garfield's been around since 1978, I believe. So it's been around for quite a while.
And then there's some comic strips that have been there for
Absolutely.
decades and decades
I mean,
and decades.
Blondie has been running since the 1920s, I believe. Yeah, there are strips that have been around who are coming close to 100 years, some of them, yeah.
Tell me some of the cons of your job, and then maybe some successes and things that you're most proud of.
Well, some of the cons would be, I think, one would be you're always starting from scratch in a way, so you're constantly having to come up with new ideas, new funny things, new ideas for books, and that can be stressful a little bit.
Especially if you have writer's block.
Right, or if you've been doing it for a while, it's like you've used up a lot of ideas. I've sent Jerry, I think, over 1,600 Baby Blues ideas. So, I always think when I finish, well, I may never think of another idea, but so far I have.
Okay, good.
So there's that. Another part of being a writer is you have to, any creative person, you have to deal with rejection, whether you want to be a painter or an actor or a director or a dancer or singer. You're going to have to deal with a lot of rejection in your profession because people just aren't always going to buy what you're selling.
Okay.
So you have to be prepared for people to say, no, sorry, we're not going to publish your work.
Okay.
This just doesn't meet our needs. And you also have to be ready to be edited because even if they do buy it, they may want to change it. So.
Okay. So there's some cons, but lots of successes too.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's always fun to see your work in print. The general public generally thinks that it's very cool to be a writer.
Yeah.
To say like, oh, you've written books, really? Well, that's fun.
Yeah.
you work for Garfield. That sounds cool. It's not your typical job, and a lot of people find it very interesting. Okay.
Let's see some of your actual work.
This is an original Garfield strip that was given to me when I retired from Garfield. And you can see typical Garfield 3-panel strip. And I don't know if you can, it's probably a little bit hard to see on the camera. You can very faintly see a lot of light blue pencil lines. Well, the way the Garfield strip was done, and I think it's still done this way, is Jim Davis would do a rough pencil sketch of the strip, saying basically what he wants the action to be and what the words are going to be. And then another artist would take a blue pencil and draw out the characters and everything as you see here. But the blue pencil does not show up when it's scanned into the computer for being sent to the newspaper syndicate. So you didn't have to worry about erasing all the lines later if you didn't go over them perfectly when you inked the strip, because somebody else actually took an ink pen and or sometimes a brush they use with ink on it, and actually inked in the characters and then inked in the lettering, and then you ended up with what you see here. But in the newspaper you cannot see the little blue lines in the background.
Okay.
And other cartoonists do it differently. They don't all use this blue line technique. And some cartoonists now are even doing it entirely digitally, I think, on the computer.
So technology has changed the
I believe High and Lois is being drawn entirely on computer now by the sons of the original creator. And to me, it doesn't look as good, but that's what they're comfortable with doing. So.
And I know you had a book back here. I thought that was neat.
Well, this is an original piece of artwork for a children's book that we were doing. And this was U.S. Acres. It was a second property that Jim Davis created that was set on a farm with a lot of farm animals. And it started as a comic strip, and I wrote a fair number of comic strips for that while I was at Garfield. Eventually the strips ended, but we did a bunch of children's books, and this was part of the original art. The reason I have it is because they were actually going to throw it out because they made a little mistake when they cut the end of the picture off for some reason when they were going to glue it onto the backing here. So they had to redo it. So I said, hey, can I have it? Because this is one of the books I wrote.
Yeah.
And so you can see this is the way the art looked originally, and here is the finished art
Cool.
in the book, and you can see they have put the words I wrote on the page.
Get a close up of that.
But there you have both, and you can see that it's done. You have to do it to a certain scale, and then they shrink it down when it's actually put in the book. As you can see, this is actually much larger than what was published.
Interesting.
So,
okay.
Anyway, and here are some of the other books I've done. You can see I have a lot of Garfield books and a few more of the U.S. Acres. These are the 3 books that I of my own that I did.
Mm-hmm. Tell us about
that's
this.
the first one, Cowboy Cal, which was based on a bedtime story that I told my son Jeff. I changed the name when I did the book because I have 2 sons and I didn't want to put one, the name of just one on the book. But I made up that story to tell him, and then eventually turned it into a children's book. And frankly, a lot of picture books and children's books start that way, with bedtime stories or stories that parents start out telling their children. I think the Winnie the Pooh books got their start that way.
I didn't know that.
That A.A. Milne was telling stories to his son Christopher. This was the other picture book that I did, and I just wanted to write a story about pirates, and that's how I did that one. The Vampire Hound is a novel for children, and it started out as a picture book idea, and as I was fooling around with the story, and the vampire, there was a vampire dog in the story, and he started to interest me, and I decided that he needed to be more the focus of the book, and it needed to be a longer story. And so I ended up writing a story about this dog who is a vampire, and he lives in Victorian London. I kind of like the Victorian era, that whole sort of Sherlock Holmes, Charles Dickens era. And so I ended up writing a novel about that.
So your idea just kept kind of expanding, so it became a novel.
It expanded. I thought, no, when the original idea was too confining and it wasn't right, and so I thought, well, I can turn this into a longer book.
Nice.
And I did.
Now, who did the illustrations for the picture books, the children's?
This was done by a man named Eldon Doty, and this was done by a woman named Lynn Averill, and you might be interested to find out that I've never met either of those people. Mm-hmm. I've never talked to them on the phone. I have exchanged a few emails with Lynn. It's very typical if you're not an artist yourself, when you sell a children's book to a publisher, you sell the words first, and then they will find an artist to do the book, and the writer usually has little or no input into who the artist will be or what the art will look like.
So you can't tell them, I want Cowboy Cal to have brown hair or red hair.
Now, Lynn, the publisher was very nice about sending me the rough sketches to the pirate book that I did. And so I'll show you. Here are Lynn's rough sketches for a couple of the pages of the pirate book, with the words on the page. And these are her finished sketches.
Okay.
So
much more colorful. Yeah,
much more colorful, but it looks very much like what she had originally sketched out. You can see she stayed with that.
That's neat to see. Interesting. I didn't know the process was the words first, and then the artwork second.
Yeah.
So
yeah, that's very typical, and the fact that the artist and the writer don't usually work together. Now there are a lot of children's book illustrators, obviously, who do both, like Dr. Seuss. And, so they do both, but in a lot of cases, no, it's different people.
Do you usually come up with the idea and the writing first, or is there somebody out there that's?
It depends on how things are done. With my own books and with most freelancers, you're sending something to a publisher on what's called speculation, on spec.
Okay.
And so it's you'll come up with the idea and send it in to them. Now with the Garfield books, we worked a little differently in that basically we just had publishing contracts with all these various publishers, and then they would often tell me, we want a book for a certain holiday, or we want a certain type of book.
Okay.
So, for instance, this publisher, Putnam, said, we want to do a book with Garfield that's about Columbus Day. So that's how I wrote Garfield Discovers America.
Need a good book for reading on Columbus
Right.
Day. There
So,
you go.
they were just looking for some sort of hook to sell the book to, booksellers. So it's like, oh, okay, we'll get one about Columbus Day. There aren't a lot of books about that.
So they would tell you that, and then you'd go
They
to
would
work
tell
at
me that.
creating words.
They
Okay.
were very much interested in getting like ghost stories for kids. I think those are still very popular genres for ghost or mystery stories. So they would tell me, okay, we want to write a book that's got like 5 little ghost stories in it,
Yeah, okay.
and then I would have to come up with that. Or in this case, I wrote some of these, and then we hired another writer later, and he, a good friend of mine, and he wrote some of the others in this
Okay.
book. So,
Okay.
but I wrote almost all the stories that are in all of these books.
The
here.
other ones. Okay.
Here we have more of the same, just different types of books that I wrote, and you can see more of the U.S. Acres books, different publishers, because we worked with, we probably had 5 or 6 different publishers and just different types of books. And these are Golden Book Easy Readers,
Okay.
and you can see they have very few words on the page. It's sort of the C-spot run
Okay.
for kids who are just learning to read, or for their parents to read to them. And we did several of those over the years, and it was just a real variety.
Yep. There sure is, and a big repertoire of things to show off. So.
Well, I probably wound up writing all or parts of more than 40 books, I think. So, and we also wrote a lot of joke books that were, they had knock jokes in it, and just all kinds of different things. So we did a lot of writing for those too. Everybody can come up with a few funny ideas, but if you want to keep going in this industry and be successful, you have to keep coming up with funny ideas, and a lot of funny ideas.
So we are going to look for your work in the newspapers that we get, and we're looking for Baby Blues and Zits, and if they are the funny ones, they're the ones you did, I'm pretty sure.
I would hope so, yes.
Yes. Well, we certainly learned a lot, and we appreciate your time very much, and appreciate it. Thank you.
Well, thanks for coming to interview me, and I've enjoyed it, and I hope the Scouts learned something from this and that they enjoy seeing the tape.
Oh, I'm sure they will. Thank you very much.
You're welcome. Well, I hope this won't be too boring for you. You're going to hear it all again. You're going to hear my life story.
Woo! No, I'll be interested. Hi, Scouts.
Hello.
This is take 2. Didn't have the microphone on the first time. I'm a mess.
It's all right.
Okay. Hold on one second.
We had a little camera technical difficulty.